So, Asha, who should Biden pardon before he leaves office?
Eh, it's complicated. I'm Asha Rangappa. I teach national security law at Yale University. I'm a former FBI special agent, and I'm a legal contributor for ABC News.
And I'm Renato Mariotti. I'm a former federal prosecutor, a practicing lawyer, and a legal analyst.
And we're here to help you understand topics that can't be boiled down into a soundbite or a skit. So I keep thinking, I imagine like Oprah, like you get a pardon and you get a pardon and you get a pardon. But I kind of feel like that may be where we're headed.
It may be. It's interesting, Asha, because I will say the way that Biden rolled out the pardon for his son is not the way I would have drawn that up if I was part of his team or advising him, because I think they could have certainly pardoned all sorts of people at the same time. They could have pardoned Trump and his whole crew because they're not going to get prosecuted anyway, and pardoned a whole slew of people who are being unfairly targeted by Trump. Everyone from Liz Cheney to the Michael Cohen or whoever, Jack Smith, all of those sort of people all at once, and made it seem like, look, we just want to move past this as a country as opposed to singling out Hunter Biden.
Yeah, and I think normally the big wave of pardons typically comes like right before the president leaves office. And yeah, you would have thought that this would come kind of at the tail end, kind of buried in among a bunch of other things, but his sentencing was coming up too, right? So it's interesting. I don't know if I guess it preempts the sentencing, but I know that the Justice Department felt that it should not actually wipe out, his conviction or something. It was very strange. The Justice Department was making an argument like Biden's own Justice Department. It could have been just for precedential value, but I don't know.
Yeah, I that's a great question. I will just say that I think I have mixed feelings about the pardon itself. I think that there's no question that the Hunter Biden prosecution was politically motivated, was totally outside the bounds of what somebody ordinarily would do. I think we've talked in the podcast before, Asha, that if Hunter's last name was Rangappa or Mariotti, he would never have been charged. That said, like, it's hard to get that excited about that pardon either. It's obviously understandably going to be criticized as one of many pardons by presidents of people who are very close to them. And I think singling him out was really what bothered me the most, because there's a lot of people who deserve pardons. And I guess from my perspective, I really think that presidential pardon power should be used in a way to achieve societal justice and undo wrongs. And from my perspective, in addition to sort of looking at all of these people who will be targeted by Trump, I would be considering everyone in prison for low-level drug offenses. Things like that, where there's good reasons why we may want to clear the prisons and get those people, back to their families or in the workforce.
Well, I think I would push back a little bit. I don't particularly have a problem with Biden giving this pardon. In addition to showing mercy, I forget the other word that you used, for the purpose of the pardon power, to correct for justice. I mean, I think Alexander Hamilton talked about the pardon power, keeping the pardon power, which is sort of the only kind of royal prerogative that makes it into the Constitution, right? Like it's this, plenary power. The Constitution, Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1 says the president shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. So it's pretty non-conditioned. But Alexander Hamilton said that it would be used in cases of unfortunate guilt. In other words, when the justice system takes its course according to the letter of the law, but maybe it shouldn't have been used in that particular case. You know what I mean? Like when the law becomes weaponized, or when it becomes, in other words, he's singled out for the pardon because he was singled out for the prosecution. And I do think in the cases of the 2 crimes that he was charged and convicted with, the justice system did take its course, right? Juries had their say, everything, it came at the tail end. I think what maybe a little bit dicier is the other part of the pardon, which is a unconditional blanket pardon that goes back to 2014. And this is there to preempt prosecutions against Hunter Biden, presumably for all of these alleged crimes he committed while serving on the board of Burisma. And I think that part of the pardon is trickier legally and perhaps ethically as well.
I think that's right, because obviously there's the Republicans have made allegations without evidence. I should say no evidence that somehow this implicates or it is associated with Joe Biden himself. I guess the point I was trying to make, Asha, is I don't really have a problem with it, in the sense that I think that the Hunter Biden prosecutions were totally outside the norm for the Justice Department. I wrote about that at the time. I will tell you, when I was writing about that at the time, that was not a position that most people were taking. I mean, my editor at Politico at the time was like, really? Okay, you're going to take that position? Because Democrats were like, oh yeah, go after Hunter Biden. We're going after Trump and and Hunter Biden because we are super even-handed over here on the when we dispense justice. I did think that was very unfair to Hunter Biden. But I think the Biden is giving out a pardon to his son, and there's lots of people who aren't politically connected who are on the wrong side of justice in the United States.
But he's still got time. He still can do it. It's not like he only has one pardon to
Well,
give.
that's the point. But I think he should have done it together. But it is what it is. They could have pushed the sentencing or whatever, or gone through with it, and he could have pardoned him after. I think the message it sends is that he's first in line, from my perspective. That's what I don't like about it. And what I'd like to see is, who else is getting a pardon here? Now, we've talked about, and I feel like you and I broadly agree that we don't really have a problem as well, and we perhaps would encourage President Biden to pardon, to protect, kind of have a protective pardon for people who are going to be targeted by Kash Patel. That said, I will say there's going to be, there will be a loss there. Okay. In other words, it's not like an unmitigated plus, because you're obviously going to have a right-wing talking point that's going to come from it. Like, these people the deep state was pardoned because they had done something wrong. If only we had investigated, we would know the truth of their misdeeds. But then separately, it does certainly create a precedent, right? And the precedent set for the first time on this side, really, of, hey, we're going to protective pardon anyone who may be targeted by the subsequent administration.
Is it really a precedent, though? Because Bill Barr helped, it was George H.W. Bush, orchestrate pardons for the Iran-Contra folks. I mean, this is not new. I'm sorry, it's not new. What's new is, what has actually changed is the explicit intention of people coming in to use these institutions purely for political ends, right? I mean, even blanket pardons go back to George Washington pardoned the people who participated in the Whiskey Rebellion. Jimmy Carter pardoned draft dodgers from Vietnam. Andrew Johnson pardoned the Confederates, right?
Yeah. So I think I don't agree. I don't disagree with you regarding the appropriateness of a blanket pardon, and I would feel better about pardons like every witness who testified before the January 6th committee for anything related to whatever. I really am fine with that concept, because I view it as a reaction to an extraordinary circumstance where you have a proposed FBI director who's come up with a list of people who are in the deep state that he's said subsequently in podcasts that he thinks need to be whatever examined and investigated in some way. And it's a very, very bizarre circumstance that requires a response. My point is that it's definitely it's going to have consequences, whether we disagree with these points or not. I do disagree with them. I don't think they're entirely accurate. I think they're misleading, but I think that is going to be the news cycle. And I think part of the reason we saw the news cycle we did regarding the Hunter Biden pardon is because Democrats for so long took the position and made the point that, like, yes, Hunter Biden isn't above the law and he's not going to pardon Hunter Biden, and Hunter Biden is going to meet justice in the same way Donald Trump did, which, to me, to be very blunt, I don't think that was completely appropriate, given the Hunter Biden. It was very unfair to Hunter Biden. It was done for political reasons, and so I
get what you're saying. Here's what I'm saying: the pardon is essentially, I mean, it's not judicial, right? It's political to some degree. And Bill Clinton pardoned his brother before he left. Trump pardoned his son-in-law's dad. So, I think what you're saying is the optics aren't good. I don't think there's anything super crazy about the person that was pardoned, how, the crimes for which it was pardoned. Like I said, only that blanket part is a little bit weird. And the only other precedent we have for that is the Ford pardon of Nixon. Going forward, though, I think what we need to remember, this is what drives me nuts about Democrats, is that there is this assumption that somehow doing something new or, breaking a norm, quote unquote, then opens the door for Trump and his associates to break norms. I'm sorry, but that's not the way it works. This is not a cause and effect situation. Trump and his associates have broken norms and have said that they're going to continue breaking norms, and they are going to break those norms anyway. So the question is, how do you utilize the, levers of power, institutional mechanisms in order to further democratic values? In this case, those democratic values are transparency, trying to hold people accountable, the rule of law. So the question is, will using the pardon power in this protective way, for example, against, people who are on an enemies list, who might be targeted, does that actually hinder or help the rule of law? It helps the rule of law, because those are people who are trying to actively and robustly participate in democratic processes and systems.
Yeah, I think it's more complicated than that. So I would say that it prevents a massive injustice. Okay, so for example, let's just say there's no protective pardon, and Trump in his first 180 days is got the criminal investigation of Jack Smith and Nancy Pelosi and whoever, right? General Milley and so forth. Liz Cheney, whoever he's most angry at. That's a grave injustice. It's an injustice borne by people who have who are totally blameless. There's no General Milley was trying to do the right thing for our country. It's a total grave injustice. That said, Trump would pay a price for doing that. Ultimately, it's not going to be easy to convict General Milley or Jack Smith or any of these people of anything. And him getting bogged down doing that versus doing all sorts of other evil things is not necessarily a bad thing. If you pardon all of those people, Trump will cautiously have his talking point be able to distort that as saying that, hey, the reason, yes, General Milley and all Liz Cheney and all these people were off criming, and they accepted these pardons because that's because they were, and they got this pardon from Biden because they were evil. And then he can move on to doing other things like mass rounding up of migrants or other things.
I disagree. I'm so mad right now. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. I got you mad.
I'm so mad at you. No, Trump is not going to get bogged down in this. First of all, the people that are going to get bogged down are people who work in the FBI and the Justice Department. And it's not as though they're going to just say, General Milley, you're under arrest and drag him into court and then have to prove something. Like it's true. Maybe by the time it reaches a court, if it even gets that far, the battle will be uphill. But there is a lot that can happen. We talked about that last week. In the investigative phase leading up to that can be harassing and intimidating, and that uses up a lot of resources that will not be spent going after sex traffickers or violent criminals or whoever it is that we want, hate crimes, or they're not going to do that anyway, but the kinds of things that we would want to go after. So there is a resource allocation cost to allowing these to go forward. And especially since, as I've mentioned before, I really think there is a real possibility of things like fabrication of evidence, perjury, because those are now costless crimes to commit if they're being done in your quote unquote official capacity. So yeah, and the idea that Trump is going to pay a cost for going after these people, he tried to overthrow the government in the United States and he got reelected. This man is it's not going to cost him anything. The only thing that you can do is create friction. That's my new word. Create friction so that it's harder to pursue an illiberal agenda.
I don't know which of us is more cynical, because I actually have the same outlook as you, but I just have a different strategy for getting there. I don't have any hope that Trump is going to, if we pardon, let's just say all these people are pardoned, General Milley and Jack Smith and all them, they're all pardoned by Joe Biden. I don't think that Donald Trump's gonna be like, okay, great, now the Justice Department can focus on sex traffickers and whatever and axe murderers. No, of course not. He's going to go after somebody else. So all he's going to do is he's going to go after people that weren't named, that weren't listed, that he views as enemies or undesirable or whatever. So all that's going to happen is, instead of going after these very well-known people who candidly would be paying a very big price, I agree with you on that, and are going to be the subject of grave injustice, it's just going to get transferred from them to like transgender people or somebody else that is ultimately going to get targeted by the Trump Justice Department. That's sort of how I view it.
I think we agree that Trump is going to go full Donkey Kong no matter what.
Right. I agree.
But you assume that there is like some, like it's like a limited pie of Donkey Kong madness, and it's not. It's like he can do all of them, so just make it harder to do some of it, at least, or as much of it as you can.
Yeah, I hear you. I think, I guess my only point is I am supportive of these protective pardons. My point is just it's a mixed bag. And it really is. Jack Smith's a very tough target. Good luck trying to prosecute Jack Smith for carrying out executive branch duties. Okay, go for it. General Milley, the Joint Chief, good luck with that. Liz Cheney for her congressional duty, she's like immune. Good luck with all of that. I'd rather that than like rounding up transgender people, putting them in camps or something.
So for me, the downside is a pardon would rile up the wackadoodles.
It would.
Who then may decide that they need to, somehow engage in like vigilante justice. That would be my worry. That's like, to me, if they feel like they've been thwarted. But I think also one thing that Biden can do, this is going to be super controversial. I know that our listeners are going to their heads are going to explode. I think he should pardon Trump. I think Biden should just pardon Trump. And I think he should go ahead and pardon the co-defendants in Mar-a-Lago. And I say this because we have to break it to our listeners. Like, Trump is not going to, these prosecutions are not going to ever see the light of day again.
Right.
They're not going to pick up. Right. The statute of limitations is going to expire, even if he's beaten and still alive in 2028. These are done. So in many ways, I think the best you can hope for is for some transparency in what happened, which can come through the vehicle of these special counsel reports. And Jack Smith has more latitude to write a more comprehensive report, especially for the Mar-a-Lago case, if there's not ongoing prosecutions for anyone else involved in that, I think. And then with regard to Trump, I do think that there is first of all, you take a little bit of the wind out of the sail that, Biden is just engaging in helping his team or whatever. I mean, it is, you know, it would be a magnanimous act on his part. Trump may or may not accept it, but you can't. It would make it harder to accuse him of only, trying to help the people, his own son or Democrats or something like that. And I think it would eclipse the news cycle. I think then you have a lot of noise. This is sort of the information warfare part. You make that the centerpiece, then you just pardon all these other people kind of also, up to and including, by the way, I think anyone who participated in, January 6th committee, all the way down to ordinary personnel, ordinary Justice Department people, et cetera, because I think, like you said, Mark Milley, Jack Smith, they actually, in some ways, have more ways of protecting themselves than, the Capitol Police officer, for example.
Right, or the staffers working in the
Yeah.
January 6th committee. That's the problem with pardon. You have to make the pardon so broad, otherwise they'll just find new people to use as sacrificial lambs in their targeting. Look, I agree with that. I agree with that point of view. I do think
You
that
agree that he should pardon Trump?
yeah, I think you should pardon the whole crew as part of it, because nothing's going to happen anyway. And I think it's important to just sort of say this is our way of getting all of this behind us, and let's do that. And that's maybe, he could even argue, hey, that's what people appear to have, that's where the country's at, or whatever. Just do that. He should have done that he should have thrown Hunter in that list and done it that way from the beginning. So I think that was a massive misstep from my perspective, and a very unfortunate misstep. So I think that should have already been done. So I agree with that. It nonetheless, of course, Trump's going to say, oh, he's just doing this because whatever, he's going to say a lot of the same stuff, but it would help. It would frame it differently. I agree. But I do think that he should go further. And I really do think that this would be a time, if he's going to be issuing pardons, I really think he should consider other types of targets. Why isn't he pardoning doctors who are performing abortions? Or transgender
Can they be punished
people
under federal law?
They can't be punished. They can't be punished for the act of doing an abortion. But what about any federal crime in relation to their performing of medical services during X versus, like, from the end of Roe to now? What about transgender people? I mean, you can't be prosecuted for being transgender, but if he's going to be targeting people, because look, you can't prosecute Jack Smith for prosecuting
I'm just
somebody
saying that
else either.
most of the laws targeting these people in these latter categories, the doctors, transgender, it's happening at the state level, is my point.
True. I agree with that, but I think he could use this to send a message, a broader message, that Trump should not be using the Justice Department to be going after anybody. And these are the people he's targeting. You see what I'm saying? Pardon sends a political message. I agree with you. It's political. So send the message and say, this is not just about these well-connected people in Washington. This is about all of these people who aren't well-connected, who Trump's going to be going after, because they're going to pay, in many ways, the biggest price potentially.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So that's how I would handle it. Unfortunately, I don't think that Joe Biden listens to this podcast. But
no, I don't think he does. He should.
He should.
Okay, we're going to do political potpourri.
Because there's a lot going on.
There's just so much going on.
An insane amount. One thing that I found very interesting, Asha, is seeing how Democrats are reacting to this moment. Huge gnashing of teeth and finger pointing over a result in which Democrats gained a seat in the House. Okay. They lost some Senate seats, but that was to be expected when you had, like, Jim Justice, the governor, running in West Virginia and so forth. There's some seats that were tough to hold, Montana and so forth. But also, you had a president the incumbent president do very badly in a debate and have to drop out in the middle of the race. So, there's a lot of finger pointing, and I think there's one good byproduct from that is that we are actually seeing some new leadership as a result. And we've seen, for example, Jerry Nadler step down for Jamie Raskin.
Oh my God! Thank God.
I'm
sorry, Jerry Nadler, bless his heart, but oh my God, it was painful to watch him.
I think what I like is just seeing new generations of leaders. I think it's great that AOC is running for oversight committee chair, whether she gets it or not. I think the chair right now is 74 years old. Congress has always been, throughout our history, hundreds of years at this point, of old folks who have been in there for a long time and seen a seniority system.
Oh my God! Remember Dianne Feinstein?
Yeah, that wasn't that long ago. It wasn't
I
like
know.
What about Senator Byrd? It was like wheeled around like a good for many, many years, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, I thank them for their service. That's all great. But I agree with you. We need energy and fire and and people who are going to really challenge what is to come, I think.
Yeah, now, and speaking of that, I think it's been interesting to see there has not been a lot of aggressive challenges thus far to Trump. I mean, we are not seeing, my Governor Pritzker, came out and made a statement, but it's not like we're seeing lots of preemptive action by governors. We're not seeing in Congress a lot of movement there. In fact, we've been seeing progressive members of Congress talk about, we're going to work with DOJ to cut the Defense Department.
What is even happening?
I don't know. I think
this is what Timothy Snyder calls complying in advance.
I think they think that they're co-opting Trump's agenda for what they want, which is to cut defense spending, but it's not going to happen. They're going to cut whatever stuff the right wing wants cut. They're not going to cut defense spending.
Yeah. No, it's this gets back to the idea of friction, right? I mean, what you need in a situation like this, and actually Juliet Kayyem and I did a pod with Harry Littman where she talked about this. And so I've been thinking about this idea where, Trump is going to be president. There's nothing we can do to stop that. They are going to barrel ahead with this agenda. As you and I have talked about before, the best we can kind of hope for is that these people are so incompetent that they're going to bumble along. Like they're not smart enough to be efficient and, shrewd about how they're doing it. So it's going to be kind of very visible and bumbling, kind of a clown shoe operation. That's what I like to think of it. But you can make it harder at every point. So, for example, Senators Warren and Blumenthal sent a letter to Secretary Lloyd telling him to issue a policy directive for the Department of Defense clarifying the legal obligations of the military when it comes to being deployed against civilians. Now, what does that do? Does it stop anything? No. There's going to be, if Hegseth comes in, he could theoretically rescind that policy. He could just ignore it, whatever. But the point is you create the friction, right? Of you create additional attention to this fact. You put the new secretary into the position of either having to rescind something very obviously or violate something that is in place. I don't know, like to do that, you could do that at the Justice Department, as you said. Governors could come out and shore up particular kinds of obstacles or barriers that might protect people in their states. So in other words, you put up speed bumps everywhere. And I talked about how I think the protective pardons put up speed bumps. They may they may find a way around it, but it's a speed bump. And so it is a little bit astonishing that there don't seem to be that many speed bumps being put up.
Yeah, I agree with 100% of what you said on that. I think that's bothered me a little bit. I had posted on various social media, like, hey, just saying things to social media is not enough. We actually have to the action matters, and what you do in a difficult time really defines your life in many ways.
Mhm.
And candidly, I was getting a lot of, and Trump won, and a lot of people were not enthusiastic. And I don't know if it's people are tired or they're defeatist or what, but hopefully that changes when people, actual human beings are being targeted. Because
Yeah.
if the military used against civilians is a great example, Asha, can you imagine that circumstance, what that would mean for our country? We can't just sit around and do nothing to stop that.
No, we need to get our heads in the game. And it's
Ab-
okay if you need to take a break. I'll be honest. I have not watched the news since the election. I'm on social media, so I see what's going on. But it's like I used to watch some evening shows. I just need a break. I'm doing some self care, but it's important to accept the reality that we're in, to be clear headed about it, but to not to let that create apathy or hopelessness or complete disengagement.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think there's going to have to be a step up from Democrats. It's going to be interesting to see if there's going to be some new leadership emerging out of this. In other words, it's not clear what the future of the Democratic Party looks like. And, within, I would say, maybe a year to a year and a half, people are already going to be focused on midterms and almost certainly or very likely a flipping back of the House at that point. And that's not going to take much given the razor thin majority the Republicans have there. This is a time for Democrats to be trying to prepare themselves for that battle as opposed to trying to cry about the last one.
I agree. MoveOn.org.
There you go. So Asha, before we go, I don't know about you, but since you mentioned self-care, I am taking a very well-deserved vacation starting next Wednesday. I'm going to be gone for 12 days, which is going to be wonderful.
Yeah, you do deserve it. You've been in trial for a long time.
Yeah, I was in trial for over 2 months. I hadn't taken a vacation all year, and this is the slow time for me. The courts usually are not expecting that you're going to be there in mid to late December, and usually the DOJ and SEC are all and CFTC are all on or use or lose annual leave. So I'm excited to get away.
Good. Where are you going?
So my wife and I are flying to Colombia and then doing a cruise to Miami. And so it's going to be great. We're hitting a part of the Caribbean we've never been before. So we're really excited. And we're actually going on an Oceania cruise because we have that cruise that you and I talked about in a prior episode that we're doing that inspired my wife. She's like, oh, we got to take Oceania and go on another cruise together.
Awesome. Well, we'll talk about that in a second, but I may see you in the Caribbean.
What?
Because I will be in Antigua.
Oh my God. So wait, are you around the same time?
Yes, I will be there from next Thursday to the following Thursday. This is a continuation of my 50th birthday celebration. So, I had 3 of my girlfriends come and meet me in Madrid last month, but not everybody could make it to Madrid. And then I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast. I was at a gala last May and I ended up bidding on a silent auction on an all-inclusive Antigua getaway. And I had a few drinks and I was like, oh, this looks fun. And, somebody will outbid me. Nobody outbid me. So I ended up winning it. So immediately after that, we booked this. So there's 5 of us going to this all-inclusive resort in Antigua. If your travels will take you through there.
I'm going to have to check the itinerary after this now because that would be hilarious if me and my wife end up seeing you. But for you, birthday celebrations are it's like the hobbits that they have like first breakfast and second breakfast. It's like you have like second birthday and third birthday. So kudos to
I
you.
feel like I feel like I'm allowed to celebrate this for the full year.
I agree. It's a milestone, right?
It's a milestone. So there will be many more of my celebrations to come. But and actually maybe our summer cruise can be a part of that too. So
yeah, why not?
So for those of you who are just tuning in or missed it the first time, or two. I don't know how many times we've mentioned it at this point. Renato and I are hosting a cruise next summer, a North Atlantic cruise.
It's going to be fun. Actually, we're really, I mean, you could tell how stoked we are about this one.
Yeah, I'm really excited because it's an area of the world that I wanted to see, and I think it will be fun to do it through a cruise. So we start in Copenhagen, and then we end in Iceland. I forget the city that we end in, but
Right. And we go through, like, I think we go up Norway and and then we go to
Sweden.
Scotland. And yeah, it's going to be
Yes,
awesome.
exactly. And so lots of fun stops. It's from July 20th to July 31st, so an 11-day cruise. And it's the same same cruise line that you're doing your cruise next week, Oceania.
Yes. It's like
And
it's like a fancy, nice cruise line.
smaller cruise line.
Yes. It's sort of, I think, like our ship is maybe 500-600 people on it, something like that.
I think the one that for the one that you're doing next week,
Yeah.
because I think the one next summer is even smaller.
Oh, that's amazing.
I
That's
think.
going to be awesome. Plus, we're going to spend time. We're going to have events on the cruise. We're going to do like Q&As and meet and greets and stuff and just hang out with people. It'll be great to get to know people and talk about all this stuff offline, which will be
And
a lot of fun.
karaoke. I hope there's karaoke.
I'm a huge karaoke person.
You are? So am I. What is your go-to song?
That's Amore, because I'm Italian, right? I knew that from when I was a kid.
Okay. Mine is Oops, I Did It Again.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
That
Okay, well, I'm
and
going to
or
see
Son of a
that.
Preacher Man. It depends on kind of what my mood is. And sometimes maybe Material Girl, but I did karaoke a lot in law school. So come for the legal chit chat, which we're going to keep that limited. It's not going to be like political cruise, because I think we all are going to need to get away at that point because there's going to be a lot of crazy going on. But stay for the karaoke and to see all of these amazing countries. And if you're interested, you can call the travel store. And the number for them is 800-777-6540. So, and then I know that I have a little blurb on my website, asharangappa.com, and there's like a QRL code, and you're working on getting one on your website too, Renato.
Yes, I'm just not as on top of that as Asha is.
I'm so excited that you like karaoke.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun. If you like karaoke, we're gonna do a bunch of that on the cruise.
Okay, definitely. We'll talk to Fred and make sure he's got karaoke on board.